Alright, welcome back to the channel. This video we're going to do a complete front end suspension. I bought the whole entire kit for it. Here we're looking at the control arm that we're going to replace, the inner and outer tie rod, new boot, the ball joint, sway bar link, and of course the front struts with the 10 coils on them. This kit was fairly good quality wise, it seems. The only thing that I saw that could have been better are these. They give you these zip ties to hold the boot down. It would work, but it would not work long term. So the original equipment has a metal clamp here, almost like a pipe hose clamp, and then you got your stainless steel strap that goes on this side. So we're gonna have to take it off on our car. First things first is I prepped everything here already for us. I'm just gonna get this light to turn on here. There we go. Alright, so I took out the wheel arches or the wheel covers and or the lining, and I have everything exposed. I did that because we're gonna restore those linings to new, get them repainted. But everything is lined up here. So the areas we're going to tackle is of course the strut, the tie rod in here, the sway bar linked here, and of course the ball joint and control arm here down at the bottom. So I'll get everything set up here and we'll get started. We are about 27 3/4 inches from that point there, right off center, from ground to the top of fender. So we'll see what we end up with here after we're done with the install on both sides. This video is only going to show the install on one side. It's going to be the same on the other side, so it's pointless to show both. So just like the rear of part one, same thing. Okay, we're here on the bench top here. We're going to assemble the front struts with the new 10 coils. If you don't follow my channel, you may want to go watch part one. I believe it's called the rear strut replacement, and it shows you what we're doing with the type of tools, the brand of tools we're using to decompress this strut. And then the 10 coils we're using, and what the whole idea was. Apologize for the back noise. We've got some kids here playing in the front yard, but we'll get to it. We're going to connect the spring compressor onto these springs first. Make sure you lock those in place. What you want to do is this is a preloaded strut. And this one's nice enough to give us some arrows here. These arrows point to the middle where the steering knuckle meets over here. So keep in mind that's where the arrows sit. So what I'm going to do, just for reference, is I'm going to get a marker. And I'm going to mark this 2 points here. And this plate here, because we got to remember we have a bearing here because, you know, this is the front and the car, you got to be able to turn the wheel. So just so you don't get confused, we're going to put a mark here because these two plates sit differently and they have to sit exactly like this, so there's no binding once we install it. I guess here I'll just put the reference points just for me over here. Don't have to, you can eyeball it. This is the most important part here. Make sure that we get this lined up once we disassemble it and then we put it back together. So I continue putting these coil compressors on here. These are the ones with the locking pins. Of course, I suggest nothing in the first video. If you go back and watch it, you gotta have the locking pins. Don't buy anything if it doesn't have a locking pin. Don't buy it. You know, I try to practice. If you follow this channel, you know, safety first, right? So I'm gonna tie these by hand real quick, just kind of avoid using the tool on camera here. I'm going to use an impact on these. Makes it easier and faster and safer. I'm going to line these up. Make sure you don't want to be in the line of fire of this. I'm over here on this side, so if this thing comes loose, it's going to fly out this way towards you and hit you guys. So just keep it away from you is what I'm trying to say. Since these are the front ones, they're going to have to compress quite a bit, so don't be surprised that it's going to take quite a bit to, you know, compress them. Make sure you don't have your hands in the way. I like to put it over here, just out of the way of the coil spring. I don't want to get a finger pinched anywhere. You're going to go side to side a little bit. Don't smash one side all at once. Even. And there we go. I think it broke loose there. You can tell this piece is fully loose, and that's what you want. Okay, and then next is to take out this center nut. Move this down. This one happens to be a 22 mil. I have to use a standard socket on this setup. These are FCS struts, by the way. I couldn't use a impact socket in here. It actually won't fit diameter wise in here, so I had to go with, you know, your standard chrome one or whatever these are made of. So they have a thinner wall, so it fits nicely. So like I said, if you don't have an impact, this job will be extremely difficult to get this nut off. So just beware. Since the impact hits it so hard and quickly, it'll take the nut off without spinning anything on the assembly. I'm gonna hold it firm. Should come off loose. That's why it's easy. I'm gonna hold these. Well, I probably shouldn't hold those coils. Shake this off. Make sure everything comes off at one. All right, so here's your. Oh, what's that? A little gasket material. So here's your bearing in here. You can test it. Make sure this moves around freely, and this one does. It's got a gasket on both sides. Make sure that goes back into place. And you got this piece here, goes on top of there. You got your little rubber seat here. So make sure that thing all goes together. I'm gonna go ahead and remove this coil out and move this to the side real quick. So I need these guys back. So we'll loosen these back up. You still gotta be careful with this. I mean, there's still some spring in it. So. Just watch your fingers, please. Okay. Alright, so now I'm going to pull these pins apart. Like so. Alright. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this little insulator here. I'm gonna reuse this insulator on the new 10 coils. So move this guy. Get our new ones. And puts that insulator on this one. Just about so. Alright, so we're almost ready to reassemble. I'll move this aside. So the important thing here is to always get this part here. This is the bottom piece. I'm going to switch around on this here. This bottom piece has to meet this guy right here, so it's got to fit right in here where it has a little groove. You see that on camera. So make sure that that sits there. Make sure our coils sit evenly from left to right. They're the same height. So I'm going to line that up first. Make sure that's in there. Well, first things first is we'll move this off. Sorry, I forgot we got to compress these coils down. So we'll put these guys back on. Okay. We'll compress these real quick. Try to get them even as I can. It's important to try to get them as even because once we set it all together, they need to kind of sit close to flush before we tighten everything down. Okay, this one's all the way, so I'm going to try it from this point. You might have to go at it a couple times just to get it right. I'm going to set that in that groove like we talked about before. Here. And I'm going to see is I'm going to get one of these plates, the bottom plate here, and see how this lines up. Remember our marker that we set is important. So we got it here. It looks like we might have enough room to actually set this in place. So I want to line up these lines first. That line that we made all the way to this line down the middle. Okay. We're going to get our top piece here. Make sure our bearing, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these apart. And I'm going to put them like, I'm going to sandwich them like this. And I'm going to make sure these two lines are lined up. Make sure our bearing stays in place. I'm going to slide this on gently. Line up these two lines here. Sorry, I'm going to turn it toward me so I can make sure that I'm lined up. Away from the camera here, and it looks like we're lined up here, so I'm just going to hold on to it here. I'm going to get our locking nut in place. We'll start it by hand first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at it real quick. Alright, we're lined up fairly well. I'm still going to hold these in place, and I got my hand in the coil here, so it's a little bit, I don't think anything's going to pinch me if everything breaks loose, but just beware. Now I'm going to tighten this nut on real quick, make sure everything's in place before you do this. There we go. And so what happens is this is going to spin quite a bit. So we kind of line it back up once we put it in the car. That lock is in place. It's going to be a little bit loose than it was before because the coils are compressed. So like I said, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure this is all lined up before we decompress these coils, okay? So it looks lined up here. And we're going to start letting go of the pressure of the coil. Keeping your fingers out of areas that might get pinched, okay? So I'm going to go back and make sure we're still lined up. And it looks like it went off a little bit here. So, like I said, you're going to have to go back and forth, making sure that we got everything lined up. So I'm going to tie this back on. Until I get this lined up. Alright, so I'm going to try to hold it there. There we go. And so now that should be locked into place once that coil pressure is there. So I'm not too worried about this top piece because this piece will rotate. But that piece, I need it to set there. See, I have another one here, and I'll show you the importance of it. So what happens is these two plates sit, and this one I don't have it marked. But say if you set it in this way, that's not going to work. So the proper fitment's here is where we had it marked, where there's this gap. So that's the importance of it. See, that's why we got to get it lined up. Okay. All right, let's finish this guy up. Decompress this coil. And that's it. So this coil is ready to get in the car. We'll take it over there. Alright, so we're over here on the bench. Besides replacing the struts and the springs on the front suspension, we're also going to do a full rebuild on it. That includes the lower control arm, the ball joint. So it's going to go here. Keep in mind, when we remove the nuts off of here and the bolt off the car, we're going to have to reuse those. Typically, when you order these, they don't come with new ones, so just keep in mind not to destroy the existing ones. Let's get this out of the way real quick. We're also going to replace the sway bar link, so we're going to do that as well. And then we're going to replace the outer tie rod joint, I guess you can call it a joint, and the inner tie rod. Reason being, if you have loose steering, chances are it's this joint right here that's already loose on you. So we're going to replace this. Now there's some things to keep in mind before we get to the car and start removing parts. Is I'm going to bring an existing one over from the driver's side of the car. We're going to be doing the passenger side. Driver's side is a little bit more difficult to remove this just because the clearances for tools is very limited, but on the passenger side it's going to be a whole lot easier for us. So one thing to keep in mind, if you still have factory boots on here, you typically have this metal clamp that's on here, and you can tell that I kind of mauled this one. The thing is you know, you can get a screwdriver in here and kind of loosen it up, and you should be able to pull it away from where it's sitting. And what you want to do is expose this joint here. And so how this works is there's a washer that goes on the end of this joint that goes onto the steering shaft, okay, or the steering rack. And so it sits like this. And so if you tell, there's these little markings here, well, not markings, but little pinouts here. This actually goes onto the rack this way. There's an area for it, and it keeps it from moving, and that's the whole point of it, to keep the shaft from moving at all once you install it. The other point too is once we try to remove this one, here's what that one, I guess, crush washer we'll call it, or locking washer. It typically sits on here, and so this one's destroyed by me, of course. But in order to remove this, what happens is this washer is on here, and once we go to install this, you'll understand. Basically what happens is you want to hit this area here of this washer that bends it onto these flat surfaces, and there's two of them. So you want to crush it there, and this will lock this joint with the steering rack. So just this washer is what locks it all in. So when we go to tighten this into the steering rack, you don't have to put extreme torque to torque it down. We're just going to sit it in there flush, get it as tight as we can, and this washer will take care of the rest. So this is basically our locking washer, so keep that in mind. So once we go back underneath the car, what I'm going to do is I got a long bar here I use for the BMW. And it's probably almost like a one-use thing. I only used it one time, but I'm going to try this because it has a long reach. is when this washer is on here, in order to get the old, I guess, inner tie rod out, is this is going to be bent over, and what we have to do is come in here like this, try to get under that tab and try to bend it this way. So, you know, I'm gonna get this with a mallet and I'm gonna hit it, and you gotta hit it on both sides to get it, you know, unhooked from the flat surface, and that will allow us to actually screw this inner tie rod off. So let's get started. I'll meet you at the car. Alright, so I pretty much have a head start on this one. Reason being, if you watch my previous video, it should be rear transmission mount and axle replacement. We removed a lot of the same components that are going to be involved with this video. I have already separated the tie rod in. I took off the rotor and the brake. It's not necessary. It's just for filming purposes. I want to be able to see different areas on the camera that I wasn't able to see with all this equipment on. And of course the strut, I have the 2 bolts there on top, loosely. Those are going to be removed in this procedure as well as the previous procedure, so I just kind of left it like that. It'll make this video a little bit quicker as well. If you want to see what I removed as component wise here, go back and see that video. But first thing first is what I want to do is take off the tie rod, the inner tie rod link here. I already exposed the boot. I already took the boot off and exposed the joint that we're looking for, so which is the silver thing right there. So we gotta remove, we have to bend back the locking washer tabs on both sides, and we'll start from there and see if we can screw that thing out. If you don't want to look back in the previous video and you're just here for a tie rod, inner and outer, I use one of these tools here. It does the job. It's very nifty, especially if you don't want to damage anything. You just basically put it over here. You take the nut off, you take the cotter pin out, you put this guy in here, you turn it down until this thing pops out. So, but I do suggest watching my previous video. So let's attack that area there first. See if I can get you a good view what I'm gonna do. So we need a mallet and maybe something something straight, maybe a pry bar, a long screwdriver that you're able to strike. Like I said, I'm gonna be using a silver bar that I had here. It's actually, I think it's probably aluminum, but we'll try it. Let me find my mallet. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find those 2 areas. One's on this side here. And the idea is I'm hoping that I can actually bend back these washers. They're fairly delicate, so we should be able to get to them. So I'm going to find a good striking point. I'm going to move you for a second. There we go. So if I can get you in here without hitting you. There we go. I'm going to start with this one here. Feel back there and see if I stroke it off, and this one feels like it's free, so now I can hit this side. See, let me see if I can get you in a different spot here. Maybe there. Yeah, you can kind of see it. So we're going to be hitting here, right in this spot right here. if I can keep it on. Let's see if I can get a different angle at this. Pull this rod out real quick. There we go. Let's see if I can hit it from here. It might be a little bit better of an angle. I didn't want to show this on camera, but I figured it'd be important. It might save some time and effort. Who knows? Maybe someone doesn't know about the lock washer and they try to spin it off and it's just not happening. This way, if we do it this way, it's the correct way. How does that feel? And then a little bit more on this bottom side, and I think we got it. I think that might be enough. So now it's a matter. I'm gonna use. Let's see, what am I gonna use around here? Anything that fits, really. I'm gonna try see if a crescent fits. This crescent might be a little bit too small for that. Yeah. So maybe this is a little bit of a bigger crescent. But I'm just gonna try this first. See if I can break it loose. It shouldn't be that tight. Twist this way. Yeah, she's on there tight. Okay. Well, see where we can grip it. Since I'm replacing this, I don't mind using the vice grips on it. Hopefully I can get a little bit more torque. If I can lock it into place. So I'm going to use the vice grip method here. I'm going to tackle it on this side. This way it kind of gives me an angle here with the vice grips, and then I lock the vice grips in place here, and then I'm able to kind of hammer, kind of give it a little bit of a shock, and it should spin after that. And so that's your result. I'm going to take out the vice grips for now, and now we should be able to hopefully kind of remove this by hand. There we go. And then so here's the locking washer I was telling you about. And then here's the grooves right in here, is where that back washer hits, where those two little pin-ups stand up here. So they lock into here, and then we'll lock it afterwards. But we're gonna save this. Don't damage your tie rod in yet. We're gonna take it over to the bench real quick, and then set up the new tie rod in. Alright, so we're back here on the table with the old tie rod in, inner outer. We're going to get our new one and start assembling this so we can put this one on the car. Hopefully your car before had somewhat good alignment, because we're going to use this one as a baseline to set up our new one. Now it might not be perfectly exact, but that's for the alignment shop to worry about and take care. They're going to take care of it for me. It's the proper way of doing it. So we'll get started. We're going to put the boot on first. Unfortunately, this kit, they give me zip ties to hold on the boot. They'll work. They might not last that long. So if you can get some better quality hardware, please do so. So we'll get this boot on first. We're going to have to take off this bolt, or this nut that they put on here. We'll slip the boot over. Put it there for now. Put the adjustment nut back on. I'm going to put it all the way to the end in this case. So I'm going to do here is what I do is I'll start the end of it. We'll start it up here. And I use the old one as a baseline. I go from end point to center point of this side here is what I usually do. I'm sure other people have other methods. This is just the way I do it. It's always worked. You know, it's good enough to get me into alignment shop, you know, that's for sure. So I'll lay it out like this first, kind of give like, it's not perfect, but I want to get kind of close on this end. Just iron it horizontally first. And once I'm close, I stand them up. Make sure everything's kind of, your joints are straight. I don't know if this camera is actually capturing it. Let me check. No, it's not. So let me adjust you real quick. Alright, so I'll bring it up to here. And so I stand them up side by side like this. And what I want to do is try to get them as close as possible to center point to center point. And so I'll keep on adjusting this one until I'm kind of satisfied that it's fairly close and manageable. And the car's going to be in safe shape to drive to alignment shop. So I think that looks fairly close. I'll go one more. And it looks like that's close enough. At this point, I'm going to lock it in by hand. And I'm just going to lock it in like this, just by hand for now. Once it's on the car and we have everything in there, I'll lock this a little bit tighter. So it, you know, it's safe to get to alignment shop and it doesn't come loose on us. So I think we're good here. We'll leave this here for now. Alright, so we're back over at the car here. I'm going to make a quick note, just in case you don't watch my previous video, is I have the front of the car jacked up on jack stands evenly on both sides. The reason they gotta be even is to get that sway bar link on easily. So if you balance both sides out, it'll balance out that bar, and the install of the new link will be very easy. But right now we're going to tackle the ball joint here. The stock nut is a 19 millimeter, and so it might take some force to break it loose. In our case, I broke it loose for us off camera, not to see the struggle or abusive tools to get it off. The only thing that actually fits in there because of the CV boot here is, you know, your regular wrench. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach behind here. You're not going to be able to take off the nut completely at this point. We have to actually pop the joint out before we can actually get that nut out. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to loosen up this nut as far as it would possibly go. I also have a jack underneath the ball joint at this point. That's just for safety right now. We'll be adjusting that as we go along on the install. Okay, so I'm all the way up to a certain point where I'm not able to turn it no more because it's going to bottom out against the CV boot. Okay, so now I'm going to use a ball joint separator, and I'm going to start whacking away at this. Now there's other ways of doing this. I prefer this way because, well, I have neighbors, and if I start pounding around away at this joint, I'm not completely sure they'll be happy about it. So I'm just going to use one of these this time. A mallet. I'm just going to kind of weld at it. Check if I broke it loose. I didn't hear anything yet. No. It might take you a few tries, but it'll get there. So what I might want to do is what I'm going to do here is lower my jack a bit. I'm going to take a little bit of weight off of it. keep it up in case it shouldn't fall down too far, but I felt it go. Oh, I'll go check and turn this a bit. Check my nut here in the back. You should be able to screw it off by hand. At this point, okay, it needs to be separated a little bit more. So I'm just going to put pressure here. Slowly remove the nut. Now the kit comes with a new nut and cotter pin. I forgot to mention that I did take off a cotter pin off of here as well. So I'll set this aside and keep it just in case. Now, I'm going to get the jack out of the way for now. Make sure everything's separated. I'll wait for the knuckle as much as we can get it. There we go. Now we know for sure it's broken loose. And now we can tackle the, there's 3 bolts that hold in the lower control arm. And, let's see if I can remember what size. I believe they're 19s. So we'll get those 2 first. We'll get these 2. Hopefully you can see that. One right here and one over here. Please note, this car has a spacer, and it's just an extra piece that goes on here. So don't forget about this spacer. You know, as soon as we unbolt it, it might, you know, we'll drop it out at some point, but we need to transfer this over to the new one. I get close to this other one. This other one seems really tight. Okay. Either that or my tool needs to be charged. But what I'll do is I'll hit it up close. We lose torque when we have an extension on it anyway. See? Just like that. The other one is right over here, and we access it to the bottom. See if I can angle you a little bit down. Right here. So the other one, like I said, we have to hit it from the bottom here. It goes right through this opening here. So we'll hit that one down. See if I can get this out by hand now. This one's a little bit of the dreaded bolt when reinstalling this. It doesn't have a fixed mounting spot for the bolt. It's kind of a floating one. And it's a little bit difficult to line everything up. Alright. I'll just pull these bolts off real quick. Just the camera for y'all. There we go. So now it's a matter of just making sure we don't lose this spacer here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to grab it. So this is the spacer. We need to transfer it to the new part. And we just have to wiggle this arm out. That's it. So we'll take this over to the bench. We have to start assembling the new parts. the ball joint. We need everything from there to transfer over. So let's get over there. Okay, so we're over here at the bench. There's some equipment we have to reuse on the old control arm. It's these 2 nuts here, and there's 1 bolt we got to transfer over to the new one. So just take these off. Go. Now to point out that these nuts are self-centering, so we don't have to worry about any adjustment when we put the new ones together. Get our new control arm here out with the old. Alright, so we put our new one in. I'm going to start with the center one here. I'm going to tighten up the 2 nuts first because that's what's going to center up the ball joint perfectly where it needs to be first. That should be tight enough. And don't forget, we're going to take it back over the car, and don't forget your spacer. The spacer goes on this inner part here, just like so. And then so we'll take this over the car and get this in. Okay, I would suggest when reinstalling this control arm is to start with this point first into the slot here. Remember when I said it had a floating, kind of a floating nut? I'll show you what it looks like here. It's this guy here. So it kind of sits on top of the subframe here, kind of locks into place. There's no slot for this. It just sits on the edge, almost on the lip, like this, but here on top. So the clearance is very minimal, and so it's hard to line this up when you line everything together with the bolt. I would suggest threading this bolt onto this nut several times. You know, preferably with, you know, if you have an impact or whatever, something that hits it real fast, you want to make sure we have a smooth connection. Trust me, it'll save you some time and some headache along the way when we're trying to fit this back in there. So that's what I'll do. I hit this a few times already. I'm just testing it by hand because I'm going to do it by hand first. I just want to make sure it has a purely smooth transition. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and rest this right on top just for now. We'll get to centering that as soon as we get this control arm in place. Like I said, I'm going to put this in here first and try to line it up as much as I can this way before even moving anything toward the other 2 mounts to the subframe. So I'm gonna grab my bolt. I'm gonna try to line it up into the mount first. Just like so. Oh, and I had it. Okay, let me, I have to reposition myself slightly here, sorry. All right. Once you got the bolt kind of in the mount, then you gotta center up with the top hole, and then try to center up with the your holding nut. Trust me, just be patient with it. Like I said, it could become a headache. So I'll continue this process off of camera. I need to probably get underneath the car a little bit, kind of get in the way of the camera so I can get my hands where they need to be and try to center up that bolt and get it started. And then we'll come back and connect the rest, the other 2 bolts here on the other side that way. Okay, so I got that first mount in. I got it started loosely. Next is these next 2 bolts here. Not forgetting that spacer, okay? So, and I'm just going to bring it up in here. Kind of cover it around. Get the first bolt kind of in and started. Start it by hand. Make sure you catch some threads. There, reach around and get this other side. Okay, I got some threads. I caught some there. What I'm going to do is unload this lock real quick. See if I can kind of curve this out of the way. Alright, so I'll tie down the first one. See if I can reach this back side without, well, actually what I'll do, since this whole assembly is kind of my way to the other bolt, I'm going to go ahead and slip the ball joint into the bottom of the knuckle here. So you might have to pry down on it, like so, just to kind of fit it around. Let me see if I can I'm going to put a wrench on here to move that ball joint where I need it. And what I want to do is kind of position it in place just like that for now. Get a rag. Alright, so now I'm able to reach around, actually tying the last bolt here. Now I'm going to go back and finally tying up this other one, the first one we did. That should do it. Okay, so we'll come back here and finish up this ball joint. So the case here is I don't want to snug it fully in. I want to get a little bit of threads. Remember, it's real tight down here. So I want to try to get this started the best I can without fully snugging it, popping it together. Alright, so it's being stubborn getting in, so what we're going to have to do, it's too much of an angle for it to compensate, so I'm going to have to remove one of the bolts up here on top. So you can see I'm going to remove one of these bolts, this top one here, and that's going to give us a little bit of angle to drop that drop the ball joint onto the knuckle. So I'll do that. See if that's go. At that point, it should give us a little bit of play. Hopefully. Let's start that bolt on that knuckle. There we go. I think we got to move it a little bit. Okay, so we got it somewhat in position. We got it to move, and so now I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the jack, put it right underneath that ball joint. Just center it. We're gonna push it through, and I'm hoping, or it should, on the other side here, be able to give us enough play to start the bolt in. Looks like it turned a little bit too much. I'm going to have to lower it back down. Okay. Let's go back up with it gently. All this point, I just want to give it enough so there's enough room to actually put the nut on it. So I got a little bit there. I'm able to put a little bit on there. I didn't check what size that was. We'll try a 17. That's not a 17, so it might be a 19. The same that we removed before. Let's see what I can do with my 19. There we go. So all I want to really do is get it started on there solidly. And now I'm gonna, since I got it started pretty well, what I want to do is I want to jack it up a little bit. I want to take weight off that ball joint and transfer it onto the jack. Looks like about there is good. I think you guys see it. So now I should be able to tighten this thing down. Maybe back it off a little bit. Seems a little bit tight. It's kind of tedious at this point because we gotta do it this way, but that's all the room we really have to work with. We'll get it down where we're able to tighten it up with 2 wrenches, and then we have enough room to put in the new cotter pin. If you can't put in the cotter pin, then you don't have it torqued down enough. So I guess that's kind of like a telltale sign. Alright. So we're there a little, I think we're pretty tight. Let's see if I can lose a little bit of tension off the jack real quick. Put it back on the joint. At this point, I want to see if we need to torque it down a little bit further. Not like the way that's filling. So once you got it torqued down, you want to torque it down really good. I'm gonna inspect this a little bit, but torque it down as far as you can. Make sure you can get your cotter pin in. Put the cotter pin in, bend it back, and then we're done with the ball joint, and then we'll go on to the tie rod inner and outer portion. Alright, so off camera I finished that ball joint. I got the collar pin in, it's torqued down fairly well, or good enough. And so I still have the jack, just to mention, I still have the jack underneath the ball joint. It's taking a little bit pressure off of the control arm and the knuckle, and some of the weight off of the strut right now. And so I still have that one bolt in the strut while I was adjusting the ball joint. So what we're going to do is we're going to do the strut next. So I'm going to leave that bolt in there for now, and I'm going to go up top and loosen the 3 screws that are holding the strut into the body. So it's these 3 here, and I'm just going to loosen up these 2 outside ones first. Hopefully I don't lose this nut. I'll put this nut to the side here. Alright, so just want to loosen these up. And don't lose your extra support here. So here, this is the parts we're going to reuse. And so I'm going to slowly loosen this one up. So I'm going to leave it there for now. I want to see if it'll drop once I come down here. And what I want to do down here is go ahead and relieve or take out that last nut, bolt right there. So that's what I wanted to do. At this point, just be careful with your fingers. I'm not sure how much weight is buried on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my jack, and I'm going to lower it where I have it now. Let's see if it takes a little bit weight off of the strut a little bit. And so I went all the way down, and I'm going to bring it back up. And this is kind of like at your own judgment. You got to kind of feel for it. I'm just doing this so it's, I feel it's a safer way of doing it. I don't want anyone pinching their fingers anywhere around here. Everything's real heavy, and it might hurt. So I don't want no one to hurt. And so safety first in my garage, or I try to be safety first. See, I took all the weight out and it was perfectly centered. And of course my bolt went flying that way. So now what I want to do is kind of slowly loosen this, keeping my fingers away from areas that might get pinched. Okay, so I'm going to set it right here. What I'm going to do is I'm holding it here, and the last screw on top that I left loose, I'm going to go ahead and take it off at this point. And there we go. I'm still holding it. We're going to bring it out. We'll put that one aside. So I went ahead and grabbed the upper middle bolt bolt nut that the last one we took out on top. So I'm gonna keep it in my left hand while I bring in the new strut assembly. And what I want to do is I want to try to center it up here, and I want to be able to get that inner bolt in first and kind of start it with a nut on top. So I'm gonna hold the whole strut assembly with one hand, and with the other hand I'm going to reach around on top and just start it. So I just need a starting point at this point. So get you guys set up. I get the new strut. Making sure you got everything facing the right way, as we did assembling this strut and coil together. So I'm going to grab it. I'm going to try to center it on here first. There we go. And I'm going to start that middle nut on the top of the strut real quick, just by hand. See, I got it on there. It's nice and loose. We still got some flexibility to play with here. And at this point, I'm about to grab that bolt I lost underneath the car. There we go. Okay. So I gotta make sure we have the nuts and bolts for the strut to knuckle. And get you back down. Here we go. I'm gonna put you to the side so I have a little bit of room to work with. So I still have the jack underneath the knuckle. Nothing's changed there. I just want to center the knuckle onto the strut here. I want to pull them together, making sure not to put your fingers anywhere to pinch. And you want to go ahead and look at your holes and see how they're lining up. In my case, it looks like my knuckle needs to go down to match up the holes on the strut. So I'm going to get the jack and lower it slightly. I'm going to stop there. I'm going to press everything together. And what you want to do is go ahead and grab one of your bolts and see if you can start it. I'm very close, so it's just minor adjustments with the jack. Actually, I need to go down. That's what I need to do. So down a little bit here. Let's see if I can get this in. There we go. Use a rubber mallet. I'm just going to tap it in like so. I'm going to get the bottom one. So I'm going to turn this assembly to the side so you can see it. There you go. Fairly easy. And when you torque these down, torque them from the nut side, not the bolt side. The bolt will stay in place so long as you're torquing it down on this side, and you shouldn't have to worry about it spinning or getting another tool to kind of, torque it on. Let's see what socket was. These were 22. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and tighten these down. Like that. At this point, if you need to or you want to, we can go ahead and reassemble where the sensors went. And this one kind of went here, where it clips in here onto the strut, and then that goes down in this section here. I don't know if you can see that on camera. My hand might be in the way, and then your brake. Of course, I have the brake, everything disconnected brake-wise, and then your brake will go back here and back in. So I'll do this off camera because I took all the brake components off just so I'm able to film and show you exactly what I was doing. Along with the dust shield, it was the reason I was able to kind of twist it around just so I can get access for filming only. So it's not necessary to actually remove this stuff. So I'll leave that there for now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to spin this, and next is we're going to do the tie rod. Now I forgot to mention to tighten up all the bolts while you have all the weight off of it. I still got the jack underneath the ball joint, and it's taking all the weight off the suspension and pushing up on the strut here. So everything is all the way up where as far as it's going to be. So go ahead and make sure you tighten all these up. Make sure you put your support back on. Put your nuts back on it. I'm gonna just tighten it with this tool, and then I'll go back and use a hand tool and make sure they're torqued down right. And I like to do is just get a wrench. And they're tight. Oh yeah, that tool did the work. Alright, so I got our tie rod assembly here, and I'm going to start with, well, don't forget the locking washer is the first thing. So remember the locking washer. And remember, the whole idea is once we get this on here and we have it kind of torqued down or tight enough on the steering rack there, or the steering rack, we're going to have to bend this down. So like I said, the clearances are difficult. I won't be able to show it on camera, but trust me, that's what I'm going to do. It's the only way to do it to keep this thing tight. So you're just going to have to bend all these down into this gap here, and then on the other side. So there's two areas. So whatever you can do to get in there, to get a tool in and be able to bend it, that's what you got to do. So first I'm going to kind of start it by hand, making sure not to turn the end here that we tightened up by hand too. I'm going to get it in here by hand, and then over here I'm going to fill where that washer goes into those slots on the rack. Okay, so I have it lined up there, and I'm just going to twist it on by hand slowly. Till I get it about tight there. Of course, on this side, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this and I'm going to twist it. I'm going to twist it as far as I can go here, and then twist this back. So everything should be tight. Okay, so I'm going to have everything lined up like this. So we have it tight over here. So off camera, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to tighten this as tight as I can get it, and then bend back these tabs. Like I said, put the boot on, tie it up, and then so that'll be all off camera. And then for right now, since we're good here, I'm going to go ahead and install this onto our knuckle, our tie rod in. See if I can turn there we go. So this goes right in here. I said these new joints are really tight, so just gonna have to work with them ever so slightly. I'm gonna get them to line up smoothly, like so. I'm gonna give it a little tap here. This is with a rubber mallet, so I'm not really hurting anything. And get your new nut. Let's see if I can center this up. Sorry. Get this all the way. There we go. So we can get our new nut here. I'm going to torque this down. I like to get it kind of hand tight, just like this. And once I get to a good spot and I can see where the cotter pin needs to go over one. So what I typically like to do is I'll get another, I'll get another wrench like this. And I feel like that might give me the right amount of torque that I need. And I got the wrong wrench. There we go. So I'll get it like this, and I'll just turn it ever so slightly, and then come back and check your spot for your cotter pin, and then move a little bit more. I think that should do it. Get your cotter pin in. I'll go in from this side so I can see. There we go. I'm going to tap it in. It's a little bit tight, or it's binding up on the other side. See if I can turn it a little bit more. There we go. Here's my pliers. This thing is straightened out. Go. Where's my pliers? There we go. Yeah, let's see if I can wiggle this in a little bit more than I like it. God, I love these things. They always give me a hard time. Alright. In there? I think so. So I'm going to go ahead and grab one end and pull. There we go. Set it in place, wrapped around. And this one I like to wrap it completely this way. There we go. So I'll finish everything up here and we'll come back and then we'll do the sway bar link. And then we'll wrap everything up and we'll see what type of drop we get. So hopefully it's good enough and it matches the backside. So there's a strut where it connects to, and I don't think you're gonna be able to see the bottom part. It's pretty dark on camera here, so I'll get the light and kind of show you real quick. So we're gonna connect here to that point here. Oh, that'll work. And then down there to the sway bar, which is right here. And it's just a matter of tightening those up. We get our new one here. Top. Let's do the top first. There we go. Yeah, that brake line's kind of in the way there. And then the bottom. Start the nut on this one. It's all a matter about just tying this stuff up. So I'm going to tie these up off camera, get the brakes reassembled here, and get the tire on here and see what the suspension looks like. We'll take a quick measurement. Alright, so we finally wrapped this up. That's the end of suspension work on this car. I'm going to take a quick measurement as we started the video and see what we get here. And of course this might settle a little bit more once we drive the car. I just did a simple balance and then the back tires are locked up right now, so it probably won't fully seat yet. But as of now we're at 26 3/4. I do hope it goes down about ½ inch. I think it'll look really good. Like I said, I think we're gonna have to drive the car a little bit, and the suspension will settle down a bit. But that's gonna be a conclusion of this video. Thanks for watching. Look forward to new videos coming. We're gonna do nothing but engine work. I'm not sure which one we're gonna do first, but it involves taking out quite a few parts. I don't know if we're going to do the timing belt and water pump first or what. So make sure you subscribe and stay tuned. Thanks for watching.